I asked Mike if I could introduce Joy and Nathan, because I figured if Roger was here, he would say something wonderful about those two, and I wanted to. But I just wanted to introduce Nathan as my son-in-law, and it's just been a pleasure for Roger and I to get to know him, and it's just encouraging to see his heart for the Lord, and I'm just really excited to hear his testimony. And Joy, I just had a quick story. Just through her college years, she would come over and visit Raj and I, and she would just be frustrated. You could tell she wasn't encouraged, and she would be frustrated about her life, and she'd be frustrated with God, and she'd visit with us for a little while, and then she'd get up and say, well, I'm leaving. I'm going to have a quiet time. So we were just always so encouraged, but a little confused at her frustration, but then she just would leave and go have a quiet time. So she just always ran back to the Lord, and that's been encouraging to us, and so I'm excited to hear from her as well. So here's Nathan to share his heart.
Good morning. I don't know if I'm allowed to stand here or not. I'm not really teaching. I'm just going to tell you a story. I'm Nathan Ryder. I didn't grow up in GCC, M28, whatever we are now. But I married in Everhart, so now I'm here. And I grew up in a church called the Christian Reformed Church, which has a lot of similarities to what I've seen so far at Summit View and what I've heard and talking to the pastors. And one thing I would say that would be different is I grew up with a lot of head over heart sort of teachings. And not to say that that was corrupt or horrible thing. It was just an emphasis. It was a type of people and a background, and that's what people liked. And so I grew up, and I was a second-generation Christian. I went to Sunday school. I learned about Jesus. I thought, yes, this is a guy. This is who I'm supposed to follow. This is what my parents are telling me to do. And as I grew older, though, this might be a familiar thing. I had a lot of questions of like, okay, so I've been told this whole time about this God guy, and I'm living in a world where some people think he's real and some people don't. And do I think he's real? That's a good question. I think he's real because that would be the most convenient thing in my life if I could believe the same thing as my parents do. It'd be really complicated not to. But there was a couple things as I got older, especially as I got closer to high school, that it made it difficult for me to believe that this God guy was real. And so there were sort of two things that made an issue for me. And so one of these things is that I became more convinced, and I think this is true, that becoming a Christian or being a Christian is something that requires being very uncomfortable. It's something that is requiring radicalism compared to today's culture. One really good example that I think convicted me a lot when I was younger, and still now, is the story of the rich man and Lazarus. And so this is not the Lazarus that came out of the tomb, but this is the Lazarus who was a poor man sitting at the gates of this rich man and was ignored. And this rich man goes to hell. He ignored this poor man at his gates the whole time. And he's told, Moses and the prophets gave you your chance. You had your chance to believe and to show faith, to listen, and you didn't take it. And this was very scary to me. It's still scary. And another reason why I felt this way, and again, not to say that I was wrong in thinking this way, I think this is still true. I went to Haiti on a mission trip when I was in early high school. And before I went, I talked to my youth pastor, and I said, Kirk, I don't think we should spend all this money for me to go out there. I don't think I'm going to be that useful. And he said, oh, Nathan, you will not be that useful. That is not why you're going. He said, the reason you're going is because this is an investment in your faith. This is also a connection between cultures, right? We're going and we're connecting cultures. We're seeing faith from the Haitians, and the Haitians are seeing faith from our point of view. But he said, no, you are not going to be more useful. That money is not best spent from a practical standpoint in you going there. But you're going to see a very different way of life. You're going to see people who live in a house that's smaller than your garage, right? And you're going to take that with you back home, and you're not going to forget this. This is going to be part of your relationship with God. It's going to be part of your faith. And he was right. And so it made it really hard for me as a high schooler to think, what am I going to do now with my life without it being something very radical for Christ? I think I maybe went too far. I think maybe sometimes, things seemed really black and white, and, how can I get a job and make money for myself if these other people don't have money, and how can I buy something from Walmart when, like Walmart is got all this stuff that they could never even get in a different place, and it ate at me really hard. And this is where we get to the second part of why it was very hard for me to believe God was real, because if God was real, then that was something that I believed, that I had to really do it. And the second thing that made it hard for me then is because I couldn't do anything that I thought I should do. I couldn't get myself to do homework. I couldn't get myself to read the Bible. I couldn't get myself to stop sinning. Now, these aren't things that you need to do perfectly, and I didn't believe that, but I really couldn't get myself to do things. I had very, very, very low self-discipline. And it just made it really hard for me to accept that God was real, because that would be really mean that, I was just going to fail over and over again. And not just fail a little bit, but fail pretty much completely. So it was at this point that I kind of decided, later in high school, I decided that, well, then maybe I just won't try. That seems a lot easier. So I didn't. I continued to go to church and do the actions. And as John was saying, there's people that do that, right? And I did actually end up going to a Christian college. But the reason I went to this Christian college is because I was too afraid and too unmotivated to apply to any college except for the one that my sister went to. And that one was also very easy to get into. So I end up in this college because I've got nowhere else to go. And I was not really trying at all in a personal relationship with God. I wasn't praying. I wasn't reading the Bible. I wasn't doing any of this stuff. I didn't really believe any of it. Or at least I wasn't thinking about it. And it brought me to a pretty dark place. The summer after my first year in school, I worked for the college, and I spent most of that summer in a room living by myself. And I don't honestly remember much because I didn't do anything. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any friends. I didn't try to make friends. I didn't pray. I didn't read. I didn't think if I could help it, I would just consume media. I would do anything except be alone with my thoughts. And there was nothing stopping me from going out and enjoying life. It just didn't seem like there was any point. So yeah, I would say that I was depressed. Lucky or blessing for me is that I'm very externally motivated. So when the school year started again, I could, pretend like I was a functioning human being again. But it seemed pretty clear to me that I wasn't going anywhere fast, and that I didn't want to continue this way. So it was at this point that God did a couple things in my life that brought me back, that primed me to once again, or maybe for the first time in some ways, start a relationship with him. And so a couple of these things are, for one, in an attempt to sort of get a life experience, I, on a whim, and I would say this is definitely a God move too, I applied the week after it was due to go on a semester abroad to somewhere that that I was not able to take any of the classes in my major, so it just basically took an extra semester of money for me, and it was just a really bad idea in a lot of ways, but I did it anyways. And I was in Nicaragua for 4 months. And I was thinking, man, this is going to be such a great life experience. I'm going to meet so many cool people. I'm going to learn so many things about myself. And I learned that, once again, people live very differently in different places, and they just have a different way of life, and it's not like mine is right and theirs is wrong. But, for example, this family that I lived with, they didn't have internet, and in downtime, we would just sit. That's it. They would talk, but I didn't know Spanish that well. So I would try, but it was really, really exhausting to keep trying to speak in Spanish. At some point, you're kind of like, oh, my goodness, I had to speak Spanish in class, and I had to speak Spanish to these people. And I gained a lot of sympathy for people that have to learn English and be in our country. But I just sat by myself a lot of time. And I told you that I had a lot of trouble being by myself and just by myself with my thoughts. God kind of put me in a situation, which I definitely didn't intend, where I had to learn to be by myself. And I felt, again, a wrestle with God, which is a good thing. I felt, again, like, hey, I want something more. And fast forward, back at this college, the second thing that God did to really cement my reliance on him is I got in a relationship with a girl, and that relationship went very poorly. And we broke up. And then we got together, and then we broke up. And then we got together, and then we broke up. And then we got together, and we broke up. And then we got together, and we broke up. So it was really bad. It was really bad. And there was mental health stuff involved, and it was just very, very painful. And during this time, I had nowhere else to go. I had nowhere else to go but to try to read, for example, a book that I read, Jeremiah. I read Jeremiah several times during this period. And why did I pick up the Bible and start reading? I wasn't motivated at all. Well, for one, God had primed me by giving me the ability to be alone in my thoughts, to give me the ability to not always have to escape into things. But second, he had caused this pain in my life that made me rely on him. And I realized, hey, wait a minute. If I do start these habits, if I do rely on God, a big thing happened that I'd never really felt, and that was, oh, yeah, God is real. Now, this is like a chicken and the egg thing, because I kind of always had figured that I need to love God, and if I love God, then I'll want to do these things like pray and read, or I want to do these things like be in a personal relationship with God. But it's like saying, I love my wife, I talked to her 3 weeks ago, and that's what we decided. And I haven't talked to her since. Doesn't really make sense. So for me, the thing that I found was that being forced to start talking to God, to start reading my Bible, to start praying each day, to give up things to God, that was what brought me into a personal relationship with him. And obviously, since then, I wouldn't say that things are, oh yeah, now, I've got things figured out. But I learned that the discomfort, the wrestling, and the talking to God, these are the things that that give me peace in the end, that give me the chance to be part of something else, to give me a purpose besides just making myself happy, which I'll tell you what, trying to just make yourself happy it's pretty hopeless. It's very hopeless. And that was my experience. But that's probably what I would say for my story. There's lots more I could tell you, but I think that was my experience growing up and getting closer to this point. And I think at this point, I'll hand it over to my wife.
He's cute. Did everyone get the handout that's in your chair? Because, of course, I've got a handout. So I'm Joy, and I'm an Everhart, so I'm one of 8 kids. And I was homeschooled most of my life, and when I was 8 years old, I was with my dad, and I prayed and invited Jesus into my heart. And I was a little 8-year-old. And because of that, as I became a teenager, was growing up, and there's a lot of things that my parents wanted us to do, like read our Bibles every day and go to church and, enjoy those things too. And when I became a teenager and started having more ideas, started bumping heads with my parents a lot more, I started thinking, is this my faith or is this my parents' faith? Am I just brainwashed doing what they were telling me to do, or was this my choice? And is God even real? And why does any of this matter? Over and over and over again. And all throughout, I have a lot of journals here. I don't know if you guys can see. Most of these are through high school. You can see I've got like 4 up here. And all of them are filled with back and forth one day being like, God, I love you. Here's a verse. Thank you for answering my prayers. You're first in my heart. I'm going to try really hard today. And then a week later, the world looks so cool. Why can't I just go and do that? Why can't I go out with my friends? Why can't I party? I don't get this. I hate being a Christian. This is so boring. God only has boring things for me. And so all throughout high school, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I found like 4 signatures with a date where I recommitted my life to Christ 4 different times. I'm going to try harder. And growing up, I had a friend who was very close to me, and she shared a lot of my struggles and wrestled with not wanting to go to church, not wanting to read the Bible, not wanting to go to youth group, wanting to, wear those kind of clothes or have a boyfriend or all the things the world was doing that we weren't supposed to do. And when I was 15, she finally gave up, and she walked away from her parents and from God and went to go do those things, to have a boyfriend, to drink, to smoke, and just live that lifestyle that she wasn't allowed to have. And I was very jealous of her, and I also felt very abandoned, and I was very mad. And I decided, part of me still wants to be a Christian and wants to follow God and wants to please my parents. So if she's going to do all the wrong things, I'm going to do all the right things. And I recommitted my life to God again. And I pulled myself out of public school, and I went to college, community college classes, and I went to youth group, and I worked a part-time job, and I put into my little siblings even, and I read my Bible, and I wrote down verses, and I kept trying. And it was not a happy story. I still wrestled back and forth. I was a very reluctant Christian, and I wanted to do what the world was doing. And I still had this friend that was doing whatever she wanted, and I had to watch that. But I'm doing all the right things, and my journals are full of entries saying, God, when are you going to bless me? I'm doing all these right things. When are you going to make an example and give me a husband and give me a good life to show her that she's wrong and I did the right thing? Because look at all these things I'm doing. I'm working so hard. And life was hard. He did not do that for me. And there was no peace in my life. I wanted the world so badly. But I wanted to run for God too. I had all these friends. We went to Faith Walkers. There's amazing speakers there, and I'd get all built up. But the world looks so amazing. Like, it looks so fun. Like, why can't I do that too? Why is that wrong? I was only 8 years old when I became a Christian. I missed my chance to sin. Like the sins that my salvation, that I was saved from with my salvation, are like fighting with my sibling. Like, I missed out. And there's one thing that I didn't journal about, one big secret that I didn't talk about in any of my journals, and that was that throughout high school, I struggled a lot with sexual fantasy and masturbation and pornography in books and online. And it's really hard to run a race if you got a sandbag on your back that you won't get rid of. And my heart was somewhere else. And I wanted the world, I was doing things that the world said was okay, but I'm still trying to follow God, and I'm still trying to do everything right. And I had this shame, and I was so guilty, and I couldn't tell anyone. Like, they're going to judge me. I'm going to get in trouble with my parents. My friends are going to look at me different. And I mean, the church talks about it. There's resources for men. They fight it. There's support groups. But I was a girl, and I had these struggles. I was so dirty. That's so bad. And so I never talked about it. And part of like doing all the right things was my dad wanted me to go to college at CSU, or that's what he advised me to do. And so I did that because that I would please my father if I did that. And so I went to CSU, and I went to the Rock. And after my first semester in the Rock, they went to Los Angeles for a summer. And so I went because that's kind of cool. And one of the first sermons that they gave was on the devastations of pornography. And we had fasted all day, and it pushed me over the edge. And I got in a car with a friend at the end of the night, and I told her my deep, dark secret. And she didn't judge me. She was really sorry for me. And she shared 1 Corinthians 10:13, "No temptation has seized you except what is common to man." And I got to see that later in the week. I joined a life transformation group and with 5 other women to fight sin and share our hearts and hold each other accountable. And all 5 of the women came forward and said that they had that same struggle. It was a common sin among women. And so God was really faithful there, and we met all summer. I worked through forgiveness for that friend that I had been hating and bitter towards for years, and we fought sin, and we won, and it was awesome. And then we went home, and I fell back into sin. And I kept going. God, I love you. Here's my heart. I'm working really hard. I'm missing out. Why can't I have a boyfriend? Why can't I go out and party? None of my friends want to drink. Why can't I do that? It's so fun. I'm missing out. The Christian life is really boring, and all God has is hard stuff for me. And he probably won't let me even get married someday because, being single, doing the hard things would grow my character. So that's probably what God wants for me. And so I can't even trust him with a husband because he won't give it to me. And so I was really wrestling with all that. But at the same time, I wanted a good Christian man. And the way you get a good Christian man in the Great Commission Church is that God lays a man on your heart, and you pray about him for 2 years, and then he proposes, and you get married. That's what I saw. And so God laid a man on my heart, and I started to pray about him, and I was going to marry him. And then he married someone else. And I was like, okay, that is it. There's a couple months where I'm like, okay, God, I don't understand why you did that, but we'll work through it. I could not trust that guy anymore. And I walked away. I went out and I drank a lot with friends, and I stopped reading the Bible, and I was going to date, and finally, I'm just going to give up, and I'm going to be over here. And after a night of partying, I texted my friend, told her how much fun I had the night before. I felt awful. And she picked me up and took me for a drive, and she yelled at me. She was a good Christian friend of mine, and she was very disappointed with the way I was leading my life. And she said, "It's okay to be mad at God. It's okay to wrestle with God, but you just gave up. You just stopped. You're not even dealing with it anymore. And if you keep going this way, you're going to die." And she had seen that happen. And I felt like I had gotten in trouble. She actually yelled at me. But she kicked me in the pants, and I knew she was right. And so I reluctantly came back over here. And nowhere in my testimony do I have a come to Jesus moment where I'm crying and it's raining and I'm muddy and I've just got my heart all fixed and everything. It's always a slow process for me, and half of it I capture that in my journals. But started figuring things out with God again, and I picked up some old journals, and I was flipping through them, and they were full of boys. I look through this one. Every single one of these pink tabs is where I'm talking about a boy. I talked about 3 different boys in one journal entry. That was quite an idol in my heart. And that God showed me, and every single one of those commitments to him, every single one of those signatures was an invisible asterisk. I will follow you if you give me a good Christian man and you give me the kids and the perfect life that I want. If you give me that, God, I'm yours. And I was not his if you didn't give that to me. And I was like, all right, God, I see that. I'm still not happy about what you did to me. I see that God had to do something drastic to get my attention, but I'm still not happy about it. And so, kept wrestling with him. I had a Spotify playlist, and I would play it, and I would go on runs, and I would cry. If you saw me out crying while I'm running, I was crying because I'm wrestling with God, not because I have to jog. I highly recommend that. And I started going through this really in-depth study to fight for sexual purity, and with a few women. And this big idea in the book is that those moments of insecurity or loneliness that you want to turn to sin, you should turn to God instead, and he will fulfill those needs. I was like, okay, so I'm going to pray, God, I'm lonely, and I can't see you, I can't hear you, I can't feel you, and you're just going to make it all better? Okay, haven't seen that one yet. But I was trying, and that summer, no, it wasn't summer, like fall 2019, I got to go to a 21 Pilots concert, and they're really awesome. And leading up to the concert, I was starting to fantasize again that the drummer would run into me at the Pepsi Center, and we would fall in love. And I knew it was wrong. I knew it wasn't going to happen, but the mind can really make convincing stories. And it's like, we're going to be in the same building. It could happen. And so I went to this concert, and it's phenomenal. And then the drummer takes his shirt off, and there's a spotlight right on those abs. And I was like, oh, there's that sadness again. I know that this isn't real. I know this is made up in my mind to make me feel better, and it's wrong. And I was sad at this awesome concert. And so I stopped, and I took that mushy, moldy sadness that was in my chest, and I was just like, God, look, I am sad at this awesome concert. Can you just be with me here? Because I'm sad. I want a boyfriend. I want to be important to somebody, and I'm not. But can you just be with me at this concert? And so the concert goes on, and to pause right there, like a week earlier, I had been thinking through my time at CSU, and as part of that, doing all the good Christian things, I went into the dorms to bring all these people to the church and to Jesus, and we didn't get the numbers that I thought we should get with my amazing ministry there. I struggled a lot with sin and depression and my own bitterness in the dorms. And a week before the concert, I was like, what was the point of that, God? Like, I waste everybody's time and money just to struggle with my own crap in the dorms. Like, we didn't even get the, 300 people that I thought we should get. And I was really sad about that. So at the concert, one of the last songs that they played is they did a cover of the song Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls. And as soon as that guitar riff started playing, I had a flashback memory to walking across the IM fields, and my dorm, that's a big tower on CSU, is standing right in front of me, and I was so depressed, and I felt so invisible and so sad. And I was listening to that song, and I was crying, and I was just crying out, I just want you to know who I am. I felt invisible to the world. And at the concert, I remembered that. And I heard God say, I'm here, Joy, with you at this concert, and I was there with you then, and I know who you are. And God went to a concert with me, and he fulfilled that need for me. And then a month later, it was the night before my birthday, And I was lonely, and I was thinking about a boy in ways that I shouldn't, and I knew it was wrong, and I was trying so hard, and I failed. And I was laying in bed, and I said, God, I messed up again. I'm sad. I'm lonely. Can you just, here's this moldy, mushy sentence. Can you just, here you go, have it. And I kind of pushed it towards him, and I went to sleep. And that night, I had a dream that 21 Pilots played at my house. And they played the Iris song again on my birthday. And so, all that's just to say that it's a really hard struggle. It's not easy, and there's a lot of people that won't do it with you. But God can be there for you. He will be there for you. And it just takes time. I really, really, really recommend wrestling through it. Don't push it off to the side. If something's bothering you, wrestle it out. Because your faith is your life, and you do matter. But no one can tell you how much you matter more than God can. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thanks, Joy and Nathan. I think they're going to stick around for a few minutes, maybe around lunchtime. Is that accurate? If you have any questions, any struggles you might be working through that they could speak into or encourage you in, help you in, they will be available for a few more minutes, at least through lunch. So, John, if you want to carry on, brother. All right. Thank you.